Tonia sat by her husband's bedside, her heart heavy with fear and sadness. His face was pale, and the machines around him beat softly, showing how weak he was. She held his hand, but it felt so cold, and tears slowly filled her eyes. "God, why me?" she whispered through her sobs. "Where on earth will I find a kidney to save his life?" The doctors had told her that without a kidney transplant, her husband wouldn't survive. Tonia felt lost. She looked at him, lying there so fragile, and felt her heart break all over again. She loved him so much and didn't know where to turn. The thought of losing him was unbearable. "Please, God," she prayed, "help me find a way to save him. I can't imagine a life without him." She wiped her tears, trying to stay strong, even though her heart was breaking inside. It was a chaotic day for Tonia, one she would never forget. As soon as her mother arrived at the hospital, Tonia couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. The weight of the past few hours came crashing down on her, and tears streamed uncontrollably down her face. Her mother, a calm and comforting presence, pulled her into a warm, tight hug. It was the kind of hug that only a mother could give, one filled with love, assurance, and strength. "Everything will be alright," her mother whispered softly into her ear. "I'm here now. You're not alone." Tonia took a deep breath, feeling slightly steadier but still overwhelmed by the situation. She pulled away slightly, looking at her mother with red, tear-filled eyes. "Mama, the doctor says my husband needs a kidney transplant. That's the only way to save his life." Her mother's face tightened for a moment, showing a sign of worry, but she quickly composed herself. "Then that's what we will do. Don't lose hope, my daughter. We will figure this out, together." Tonia nodded, her heart a little lighter. "Since you're here now, let me go and inform my husband's family about the situation," Tonia said. "They need to know, and we'll need their help." Her mother placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Go ahead, Tonia. I'll stay here and look after him. Don't worry about a thing." Tonia gave her mother a faint smile before grabbing her bag and heading toward the exit of the hospital. As she stepped out into the bustling world outside, the weight of her mission hit her. Tonia walked briskly to the nearest bus stop, her mind racing. Her husband, Chaik, had always been the strong one in their relationship. Seeing him so fragile, hooked up to machines in a hospital bed, was something she never imagined she would experience. As she boarded the bus to Steve's family home, she prayed silently for strength and for the words to say when she faced them. Steve's mother, a widow who had struggled to raise her 2 children, was devastated when she heard the news Tonia broke to her. Her son Steve, her pride and joy, needed a kidney transplant to survive. She couldn't hold back her tears as she asked, "Where on earth will I go in search of a kidney for my son, my only son?" Tonia gently held her hands. "Mama, I know this is hard, but we can't give up. We should inform other family members and see if they can help us. Even if they can't donate a kidney, maybe they can support us financially." Steve's mother nodded, though her heart was heavy with worry. That evening, she sat down and began making phone calls to her relatives. She explained the situation to her siblings, cousins, and even distant family members. Some sympathized with her and promised to send what little money they could spare, while others offered words of encouragement but admitted they couldn't do much. Despite their efforts, the money they raised was far from enough. The cost of the surgery, medication, and post-surgery care was overwhelming. To make matters worse, finding a compatible kidney donor was proving to be a big challenge. Tonia felt so hopeless as she walked away from her husband's family home. She had gone for help, but no much help from his family. Her husband was dying, and they needed millions of money to try and buy a kidney for him. But now, she had nothing. As she sat in the bus heading back to the city, her mind was restless. Who could she turn to? Who would help her? She had already asked friends, neighbors, and even her own relatives, but no one had enough money to give. Tears filled her eyes as she thought about her husband lying weak in the hospital bed, waiting for a miracle. Tonia sat on the hospital bench, her hands shaking as she wiped her tears. Her husband was still lying in the hospital bed, looking weaker than before. She had tried everything, calling friends, asking relatives, even pleading with strangers, but no one could help. "Mum, there's no help anywhere," Tonia said, her voice breaking. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at her mother helplessly. Her mother pulled her into a warm hug, rubbing her back gently. "Don't cry, my child," she whispered. "I will go out and look for help. I can't let you become a widow at such a young age." Tonia sobbed into her mother's shoulder. She was tired, scared, and completely lost. She had never felt so hopeless in her life. Her mother wiped Tonia's tears and stood up. "Stay with your husband. I will be back soon," she said firmly before walking out of the hospital. Tonia watched her mother leave, her heart pounding. She turned back to her husband, whose eyes were half open. She held his weak hand and whispered, "Please, stay with me. Help is coming." Hours passed, and Tonia sat by his side, staring at the door, hoping her mother would return with good news. She prayed silently, her fingers gripping her husband's hand tightly. Tonia's mother walked through the streets with tired, shaky steps. Her heart pounded as she knocked on yet another door. A friend opened it and gave her a sad look. "I wish I could help," the woman said. "But I don't have any money to spare." Tonia's mother nodded weakly and turned away. She had heard the same words at every house she visited. Some of her friends were kind but helpless, while others simply closed their doors without listening. She felt the weight of despair pressing down on her as she walked back to the hospital. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away. She had to be strong for her daughter. As she neared the hospital, an idea struck her. What if she gave one of her kidneys? The thought filled her with fear at first. Surgery was risky. But then she thought of her daughter, Tonia, who had always been her pride and joy. She could not let her suffer. Determined, she hurried inside and went straight to the doctor. "I want to donate one of my kidneys," she said firmly. The doctor looked at her in shock. "Are you sure? This is a serious decision. You must understand the risks." "I understand," she said. "I have no money, but I have a kidney. If it can save his life, then I will do it." The doctor sighed and nodded. "We need to run tests first to see if you're a match," she agreed, and the tests were done. The hours passed slowly, and she waited with a pounding heart. Finally, the doctor returned with the results. "You are a match," he said. "But we need to be sure you are healthy enough for the surgery." More tests followed. She was tired, but she did not complain. She prayed silently, asking God to give her strength. At last, the doctors confirmed she was fit for the operation. They explained everything to her, how the surgery would work, the risks involved, and the recovery process, the doctor called Tonia into his office. "We have finished all the tests," he said. "Your mother wants to donate one of her kidneys to save your husband. And all the tests show she's a good match for him." Tonia was shocked. "What? Mum? No, no, no. You can't do this," she exclaimed. "I don't want to lose you." Her mother smiled calmly. "Don't worry, my daughter. Nothing will happen to me. I have 2 kidneys, and I'll only give one to your husband. I won't sit back and watch you become a widow. I want to help." As soon as Tonia signed the documents, the doctors wasted no time in preparing for the surgery. Nurses moved quickly, guiding her mother to the operating room while Tonia stood frozen, watching as they wheeled her away. Her heart felt heavy with fear, but her mother's reassuring words echoed in her mind. "Nothing will happen to me," Tonia sat in the waiting area, her hands trembling. Every second felt like an hour. She couldn't believe her mother was willing to go through such a serious operation just to save her husband. "Please, God, protect her," she whispered, wiping away tears. Minutes turned into hours. The tension in the room was unbearable. Every time the door opened, Tonia jumped, expecting news. Her friend, Becky, who had arrived after hearing the news, sat beside her, holding her hand. Then the unimaginable happened. Tonia's mother couldn't make it alive. The surgery to donate her kidney to her daughter's husband was successful, but just a few minutes later, her blood pressure became extremely high. The doctors and nurses rushed to her side, trying to save her, but all their efforts were in vain. She had saved her daughter's husband, but she couldn't save herself. Tonia was devastated. She felt like she was in a nightmare, like she was dreaming and couldn't wake up. She had never imagined that her mother would give her life to save her husband. Tonia's world came crashing down around her. She felt like she was going crazy, like she couldn't breathe. She had lost the most important person in her life, the person who had always been there for her. She remembered her mother's words, "I won't sit back and watch you become a widow." Her mother had given her life to save her husband. And now Tonia was left to pick up the pieces. Tonia's husband was lying in the hospital bed, recovering from the surgery, but Tonia couldn't even look at him. She felt angry, sad, and confused all at once. She didn't know how to process her emotions, how to deal with the loss of her mother. Tonia wanted to run mad. It seemed to her like she was dreaming, but this was real. Her mother was gone. She had gone into the operating room full of life, ready to save her son-in-law, and now she was lying lifeless on the hospital bed. Tonia screamed and held her head. "No! No! Somebody wake me up. This is not real." She ran toward her mother's body, shaking her gently at first, then harder. "Mama, wake up. Please, wake up." But there was no response. Her mother's body was still and cold. The doctors stood silently, their faces filled with sadness. They had done everything they could, but nothing worked. One of them placed a hand on Tonia's shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he said in a quiet voice. Tonia pushed his hand away. "No. You should have saved her. How could you let her die?" Tears poured down her face as she looked around, searching for someone to blame, someone to tell her that this was a mistake. Family members and friends rushed into the hospital when they heard the news. Some cried, others tried to comfort Tonia, but she felt empty inside. Nothing anyone said could change what had happened. A month has passed and Tonia's husband has become better, but, at night, Tonia would lay awake, thinking about her mother's last moments. Did she feel pain? Did she know she was dying? Tonia wished she had one more chance to hold her, to say thank you, to say, I love you. Her husband watched her from a distance, feeling helpless. He wanted to comfort her, but how could he, when he was the reason her mother was gone? Tonia felt like she would never be happy again. The world had lost its color. Life had lost its meaning. Would she ever heal? Steve hugged his wife so tight and started consoling her again. It breaks my heart to see you this way. I feel so much pain that your mother would be disappointed in me. Mom would be happy seeing you happy. We can't let go of the memories, but please be cheerful. Tonia listened to Steve's words, and deep inside, she knew he was right. Her mother had given him a second chance at life, and she wouldn't want her daughter to live in sorrow. Day by day, Steve found new ways to make Tonia happy. He brought her breakfast in bed, left little notes with sweet words around the house, and even tried cooking her favorite meals. Though sometimes they didn't turn out perfect, they continued their evening walks, hand in hand, watching the sunset and talking about their dreams. On weekends, they watched funny movies together, and Steve would always try to make her laugh with silly jokes. Slowly but surely, Tonia's heart felt lighter. She started smiling more, laughing at Steve's jokes, and even making plans for the future. She realized that, even though she missed her mother terribly, she was not alone. She had Steve, and together, they would keep her mother's memory alive by living a happy life. That evening, as Steve sat on the balcony, the cool breeze brushed against his face. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. His heart was heavy. He wanted to give Tonia a good life, one without constant worries about money. He finally stood up and walked inside. Tonia was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. Steve watched her for a moment, then cleared his throat. Tonia, he said gently. She turned to him with a warm smile. Yes, my love. He hesitated for a second but then spoke with determination. I've been thinking a lot. I want to travel abroad and find better job opportunities. I believe it's the best way for us to have a better life. Tonia's smile faded slightly. She put down the spoon she was holding and looked at him carefully. Travel abroad? She repeated. That's a big step, Steve. I know, he said. But I can't sit here and do nothing. I want to work hard and make sure we never have to struggle again. Tonia sighed and walked closer to him. But how will we afford it? And how long will you be gone? Steve took her hands in his. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'll find a way. I just need your support. She looked into his eyes, searching for doubt but found none. He was serious. He was ready. After a moment of silence, she nodded slowly. If this is what you truly believe is best, then I will support you. A wave of relief washed over Steve. He knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Tonia by his side, he felt stronger. Now, he had to figure out the next step, how to make his dream a reality. A few months later, Steve's dream finally came true. He traveled out of the country, and his life changed for the better. He quickly found a very good job that paid him well. Steve was so happy and worked very hard. He wanted to give his wife Tonia the best life possible. Every chance he got, He would call Tonya and tell her all about his day. Tonya was overjoyed. And her happiness showed on her face. She glowed like the morning sun. Tonya lacked nothing anymore. Steve sent her money and gifts regularly. She was proud of her husband and all his accomplishments. Steve and Tonya's love continued to grow, even though they were far apart. Annabelle had been working in the same organization as Steve for a while. She had tried everything to get his attention, but no matter what she did, Steve didn't seem to notice her. Annabelle decided that she had had enough of waiting for Steve to make a move. She took a deep breath and walked up to him. "Hello, I'm Annabelle," she said, trying to sound confident. Steve looked up and smiled. "I've noticed you for some time now," she said, trying to sound casual. "Which department are you in?" Steve glanced at his watch. "I'm in IT department," he said. "But I'm in a hurry, I have a meeting to get to." With that, Steve turned and walked away, leaving Annabelle feeling disappointed and frustrated. She had finally worked up the courage to talk to him, and he had barely given her the attention. Annabelle stood there, feeling a little embarrassed. She had finally gathered the courage to talk to Steve, but he didn't seem interested. The next day at work, she saw Steve in the cafeteria. This time, she decided to try again. She walked up to him with a smile. "Hi, Steve. I hope I didn't disturb you yesterday," she said. Steve looked up from his lunch. "Oh, hey, Annabelle." "No, I was just in a hurry." Annabelle felt a little relief. "That's okay. I just wanted to know more about you. We work in the same company, but we never talk." Steve nodded. "Yeah, I'm in the IT department. I mostly work with systems and security." Annabelle smiled. "That sounds interesting. Maybe you can teach me something about it someday." Steve chuckled. "Maybe. What about you? What department are you in?" "I'm in marketing," Annabelle said. "I handle promotions and campaigns." Steve nodded. "Nice. Well, I should get back to work." He picked up his tray and walked away. Annabelle sighed. He was polite, but still not very interested. Should she try again another day or just move on? Annabelle lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, deep in thought. She had never felt this way about anyone before. The way he smiled, the way he talked, it all made her heart race. But was she being too fast? Too direct? She sighed and turned on her side, hugging her pillow. "Maybe I should take things slow," she whispered to herself. "I'll start by being his friend, getting closer to him little by little. That way, he will see the real me, and one day, he will fall for me." A small smile formed on her lips. Yes, that was the perfect plan. Tomorrow, she would find a way to talk to him, to make him laugh, to show him she cared. She just had to be patient, with that thought in mind. Annabelle closed her eyes, feeling a little more hopeful. Tomorrow was a new day, a new chance to win his heart. Steve and Annabelle sat together at lunch, chatting. Annabelle asked Steve about his day, and he said it was going well. Then Annabelle asked, "Can we be normal friends?" Steve thought for a moment before answering. "I'm honored, Annabelle, but I'm sorry. I don't keep female friends," Steve said gently. "I'm a married man, and I wouldn't want any misunderstandings." Annabelle looked sad and disappointed. "What? You're married?" she asked, surprised. Steve smiled, thinking of his wife Tonya. Yes, I'm married to a beautiful woman who is my entire world. I left home to work in this country to make her life better. Annabel looked down, feeling a little embarrassed. I meant just normal friends, nothing attached to that, she said quietly. Steve smiled politely. I understand, Annabel, but I just prefer to keep things simple. My wife trusts me, and I don't want to do anything that might make her feel uncomfortable. Annabel sighed and looked down at her plate. I see. I didn't mean any harm, Steve. I just thought we could talk sometimes, like colleagues. Steve nodded. We can always talk at work, Annabel. I respect you, and I hope you understand my position. Annabel forced a small smile. I do. It's just rare to meet someone so devoted. Your wife is lucky, Steve chuckled. I'm the lucky one. The two continued eating in silence, the air between them a little tense but respectful. Annabel is in a tough emotional spot. She has feelings for Steve, but now she knows he's married, which complicates everything. I'm not going to give up on Steve just because he's married. I love him so much, and I want him for myself. She made a plan in her mind. I need to find a way to cause problems between Steve and his wife. When they start having issues, Steve will look for comfort somewhere else. That's when I'll grab the opportunity and make him mine. Annabel's mind was filled with thoughts of how to drive a wedge between Steve and his wife. She was determined to make Steve fall in love with her, no matter what it took. I'll start by being friendly and helpful to Steve, Annabel thought. I'll make him feel comfortable around me, and then I'll slowly try to make him doubt his marriage. She smiled to herself, feeling confident in her plan. She was ready to do whatever it took to make Steve hers. Annabel was determined to destroy Steve's marriage. If I can get into his house, I'll have a better chance of succeeding. So, Annabel found out where Steve lived and made a shocking decision. She moved out of her apartment and into the same building as Steve. The next morning, Steve was surprised to see Annabel walking out of the apartment next door. Good morning, Steve. Annabel said with a smile. Annabel, what are you doing here? Steve asked, looking surprised. Annabel pretended like she didn't know Steve lived there. This is my apartment, she said. I just moved in. You live here too? Steve looked puzzled but replied, Yes, I live here. Then he headed off to work, leaving Annabel with a satisfied smile. As soon as Steve left for work, Annabel smiled to herself. Everything was going just as she had planned. Now that she was living next door, getting close to Steve and ruining his marriage would be easier. Later that evening, as Steve returned home, Annabel was already outside, pretending to be taking a walk. Hey, neighbor, she called out cheerfully. Steve sighed. Annabel, this is unexpected. Why did you move here? Annabel laughed lightly. Oh, come on, Steve. It's just a coincidence. I had no idea you lived here. Steve didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. All right. Have a good night, he said, walking into his apartment. Annabel watched him close the door, then smirked. She had taken the first step. Now, it was only a matter of time before she got what she wanted. One evening, Steve was on the phone with his wife, Tonya. Suddenly, Annabel knocked on his door, calling out his name. Steve quickly ended the call with, What is it, Annabel? He asked. I was wondering if I could use your mop. I forgot to get one, Annabel said, looking apologetic. Steve stood up and handed her his mop, feeling a bit uneasy. He didn't want Tonia to misunderstand the situation. Meanwhile, Tonia kept calling, but he didn't answer. I just heard a female voice, and now he's not picking my call. Is he cheating on me? She thought to herself. Steve quickly locked his door as she left. Then, he called Tonia back, but she was upset. Who is the woman with you? Why aren't you picking my calls? She asked. Steve tried to explain. It's just my neighbor. She came to ask for a mop, that's all. But Tonia was skeptical. What is your female neighbor doing in your house? She asked. Steve reassured her. She just came to ask for a mop, nothing else. Tonia seemed to calm down. Okay, no problem. I believe you. Just as Steve sighed in relief, thinking the issue was settled, Tonia suddenly said, Wait, why did you end the call so quickly when she came in? Steve hesitated for a moment. I didn't want you to misunderstand. That's why I ended the call and gave her what she needed quickly. Tonia was silent for a few seconds. Are you sure, Steve? I just find it strange. First, you end the call. Then you don't pick up. Then I hear a woman's voice. Steve could sense the doubt in her voice. Honey, I promise, there's nothing going on. She's just a neighbor. If you want, I can even call her now so she can confirm, Tonia sighed. No, it's okay. I just don't like surprises like this. Next time, just tell me right away, so I don't start thinking the worst. Steve nodded, even though she couldn't see him. I understand. I'll do better next time. With that, the tension eased, and they continued their conversation as usual. Annabelle smiled to herself, pleased with how things were going. She had planted a seed of doubt between Steve and his wife, and now, she just needed to make it grow. She wanted Steve and his wife to fight, to break apart. Sitting on her couch, she tapped her fingers on the table, thinking of her next move. I need to make her believe that Steve is hiding something big, she whispered to herself. As Annabelle sat there plotting, she suddenly remembered something. Her birthday was just a few days away. A slow smile spread across her face. This was the perfect opportunity to take her plan to the next level. If I play my cards right, this will be the final straw, she thought to herself. Without wasting time, she picked up her phone and sent Steve a message. Hey Steve, my birthday is coming up in a few days, and I'd love for you to be there. It's just a small gathering, nothing too serious. Hope you can make it. As the music played and people laughed at the birthday party, Steve sat in a quiet corner, sipping his wine. He had no idea that Annabelle had secretly added a sleeping pill to his drink. Within minutes, Steve started feeling dizzy. His eyes became heavy, and his body felt weak. He tried to stay awake, but the drug was too strong. Slowly, he rested his head on the couch and fell into a deep sleep. Annabelle smiled to herself. This was her chance. She signaled to a friend, who helped her take Steve to a private room. There, she set up her plan, undoing a few buttons on his shirt and taking pictures that would make it look like he had spent the night with her. Tonia waited anxiously for Steve's evening call, but it didn't come. She decided to call him instead, but he wasn't picking up. She panicked, thinking something must be wrong. This had never happened before. They always talked at the same time every night. She tried calling Steve multiple times, but he didn't answer. Just when she was about to give up, thinking Steve might be tired and asleep, someone finally picked up. Hello, a female voice said. Tonia's heart skipped a beat. Who are you? And why are you with my husband's phone? She asked, trying to stay calm. The woman on the other end laughed. I'm his girlfriend. Who are you, and why are you calling my man at this time of night? Annabel said, her voice dripping with confidence. Tonia's hands trembled as she stared at her phone screen. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to make sense of it all. Steve had never been the type to cheat. They had built their marriage on trust. But now, a stranger had just called him her man. For a moment, she considered calling back, demanding answers. But what if it was true? What if Steve really had betrayed her? The thought alone shattered her. She threw her phone onto the bed and covered her face with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. A part of her wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Steve had lost his phone, and this woman was just playing a cruel joke. But then she remembered, Steve had never ignored her calls before. Something was wrong.